Raw and Unfiltered, but several new developments being made in the last couple of days regarding this collapse. Yesterday, we learned that prosecutors in Florida will pursue a grand jury investigation into the deadly collapse of the oceanfront condo building in Surfside here. Miami-Dade County Mayor Daniella Levine Cava said she fully supports such an investigation during a news conference yesterday. So for viewers who are not familiar with these terms, we wanted to bring on an expert. We are currently about to be joined by personal injury and trial attorney Sam Meirowitz. He is here with us on NewsNOW from Fox to kind of break down all of this information. Sam, good morning to you. How are you doing?
Good morning, Regina. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking at those images, and it's just devastating. My heart goes out for those families. It really does.
No, it's absolutely devastating. We've been covering it ever since it happened last Thursday. And I understand that your practice is not too far in the Fort Lauderdale area. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. We operate out of Fort Lauderdale. We also have offices in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. And we handle these types of cases, people that get injured from mass events, such tragedies like this. Very sad.
Yeah, and you know, Sam, like I said, a lot of information has been surfacing over the last, 24 to 48 hours even. So we wanted to bring you on here because, again, we learned that prosecutors are going to pursue a grand jury investigation. So for viewers who are not familiar with these terms, what is a grand jury investigation and how is it necessarily compared to a criminal investigation?
Okay, so just to help clarify, there's grand juries and there's petit juries. A grand jury has the role of basically determining whether a crime has been committed and whether to indict so that they can eventually someday get to a petit jury. So if the grand jury chooses not to indict, it doesn't get to a petit jury. There are some types of crimes that must go through a grand jury in Florida, such as capital murder. But the rest are really up to the discretion of the prosecutor, the state attorney. And oftentimes in situations where there's a lot of public interest in something, it's controversial, the state will go ahead and present a case to the grand jury so that the people get to decide whether or not to prosecute. Now, grand juries can also serve a civil function. They can investigate public corruption. They can investigate matters involving public health and safety, and then put together what's called a presentment, which is basically a report. And civil charges may be filed in certain circumstances. So they can come back with, they can look at it from a criminal perspective, they can look at it from a civil perspective, and ultimately have broad investigative powers to call in witnesses and get as much information as possible that would help them in making a decision as to whether something happened that was wrong.
Now, Sam, we've learned of at least 3 lawsuits being filed. I believe they're from residents that were living in the portion of the condo that did not collapse. So what kind of lawsuits are you looking for? How could they be compensated? How do you expect this process to go? I can imagine that there's going to be more in the weeks to come.
That's right. That's right, Regina. There's going to be a lot of litigation. There always is instances like this. And I did see that there were several lawsuits that were filed. There's different types of lawsuits. There's individual lawsuits, which I saw a couple of individual claims. There's also been a civil class action that was filed. There's real differences between the two. And in my opinion, in a case like this, an individual case where you have a lawyer representing you and fighting for you individually and specifically really makes more sense. Class actions, are sort of geared towards something where similar injuries occur across the board. Here, you could have a situation where one person has mainly property damage and sadly another family could have lost loved ones. So there's a real variation amongst the people that have suffered from this terrible tragedy. And oftentimes the best way, in my opinion, to be able to pursue that is an individual case on behalf of the families involved. And you see some of that already happening. The types of claims that you might see, they vary from just general negligence to breach of contract to this Latin term called res ipsa loquitur. And I can explain those if you'd like. But basically, one of the main things is that in these types of civil cases is what kind of notice was given. That's what everyone wants to know. What was known or knowable prior to this collapse? What building inspections took place, and what were the answers to those inspections? What did contractors say? What were people, I've seen pictures surfacing online of cracks in the foundation. I've seen different things showing that there was some form of prior knowledge that there were issues with this building. And I think that's going to be the thing that matters in the course of these civil actions in terms of liability.
Yes, Sam, I'm actually pulling up some photos right now. We have to the right-hand side of you on the screen. These are actually photos from a 2018 report that cited structural damage at this collapse. So within these lawsuits, do you expect evidence like this to be presented? And really, will it be a long case with all of these photos, like you said, surfacing of prior knowledge?
Absolutely. And I even think I saw a case filed in 2015 having to do with external, damage to the building. I'd have to, you'd have to look directly at that complaint to get the details of it. But there are going to be a number of discovery and investigative tools to learn all this information, and they will be. All this information that was known prior to the collapse is going to be critical in proving liability here. And there are different kinds of damages. You'll have some people that have economic damages purely where they lost their residence, they lost their home, and they have to be compensated for that. You'll have people that lost their lives and the support system, not only the emotional damage, but the financial damage. It's an epic tragedy of monstrous proportions. There are going to be a lot of people that are going to be claiming that they're entitled to compensation, as they should. And it's going to take a while to untangle.
Yeah, you just mentioned a really good point there, Sam, timing. So we learned of the grand jury investigation being launched and supported. Now, how long do you really expect this to take? Who can testify? And really, who would be handling the investigation?
Sure. So the grand jury is impaneled for 6 months. They can extend it for 90 days. There's a variety of people that the grand jury can bring in. The case is essentially brought with a state attorney as the presenter, presenting witnesses to the grand jury. The grand jury can ask for witnesses on their own to come in after getting information and then saying, hey, I'd like to speak to this person. I heard that they were mentioned in the course of the testimony of another witness. So they can absolutely do that. And all of these proceedings are going to be held in secret. We're not going to know about the actual testimony that goes on in front of the grand jury, but any number of people with relevant information are going to get called, and we'll lead the grand jury from there. Each fact builds upon another fact, and it'll be interesting to see ultimately how it plays out. If they choose to go with criminal charges, I mean, there has been some history of criminal charges in grand jury indictments with respect to tragic events like this. Some examples of what might be considered in terms of like the most aggressive criminal penalties could be something as serious as third-degree murder. And that's the unintentional killing of a person while committing or attempting to commit a non-violent crime. And then there's manslaughter, engaging in culpably negligent conduct that results in the death of another human being. And then there's potential civil charges that can be brought for any number of, if government oversight is involved, and there's some type of failure to inspect or something of that nature, there could be some public officials that are investigated. Again, this is all speculation. We won't know this until long after the fact, but I'm just kind of giving you the different possibilities, not to say that I'm aware that any of these particular charges have been considered.
No, and we really appreciate your insight, Sam, because again, as you said, it's still a very developing situation. Again, you've got all of this information surfacing, and now, not even a week later, we are learning of lawsuits being filed. So in your profession, obviously, this is a very unprecedented situation. I'm not sure we've never seen anything like this really, but could you see a single person, a single group being held responsible in the end?
Sorry, we got frozen there for a second.
Oh, sorry. I did see you freeze a little bit there. Can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Okay, I apologize. So my question to you before that was, in your profession, in your experience, obviously this has been a very unprecedented situation, but ultimately, do you see somebody, an individual, a group, whether it's the condo owner group or any specific person or company, being held responsible in the end?
I definitely do. I mean, I think that based upon the information that's out there and just taking a look at what some of the things that you've shown me and I've seen in other places, in my opinion, I think that there is going to be some accountability. And I do think that people that were injured by this, the families that were devastated by this, deserve strong advocacy, and they deserve to be represented, and they deserve to be compensated for their losses. I mean, we could never compensate people for the loss of a loved one, but in our system, sometimes filing a case and pursuing it against the wrongdoers kind of helps make our world a little bit safer, because it makes people in positions in the future take precautions and make sure that something like this can never happen again. So it's never going to bring a loved one back, but it's certainly an important step in the process, both for justice and also for the families involved.
No, absolutely. And we've even heard Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, the mayor of Surfside, say we will get to the root of what could have caused this. So, Sam Meirowitz, a Florida attorney, what can you tell our viewers, or is there anything else our viewers need to know before we send you off here?
Well, I just think that the way that everybody is coming together is good, is really good to see. I hope that that the building and the folks that are responsible will take responsibility for any misconduct that occurred, and I hope that I just wish peace upon the people, and my heart goes out to them for the ones that lost loved ones.
Absolutely, Sam. Well, we thank you so much for joining us here on NewsNOW from Fox and providing your legal expertise and insight. Again, Sam Meirowitz, everybody, personal injury and trial attorney, joining us from New York, but also has a practice in Florida there as well. Thank you so much, Sam. We hope you have a great rest of your day and hope to talk to you again soon as this investigation gets underway.
Thanks, Regina. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I want everybody taking another live look at a live feed we have from the collapse site right now.